On the Trail of Petals, a Hanahaki alternate universe, Adrientte Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction, Part 3. As it turns out, starting conversations with Adrienne was very awkward. Incredibly awkward. It was one, if not the most awkward situation Marinette had been in for a very long time. And considering the fact that this was a girl who was once so late to a play she had ran onto the stage and somehow during the kiss scene and stood there stuck in shock in front of the audience, that was actually saying something. Actually talking to him, Adrienne, the banters they would throw around, they were fun and enjoyable. Getting him to that point? Absolutely terrible. And half the time, Marinette was grasping for something that could get them back into a real conversation. For instance, there was such a time as when Nino and Alia decided to make Adrienne and Marinette tag alongside them while they went ice skating. Marinette had found herself on the cold ice more than once, and even as Adrienne tried to help her up, alas, balance was a foreign concept to the both of them, and back down they went, both red-faced and giggling. "Have you ever skated before?" Adrienne asked as they tried to get up by grabbing onto the railings. "Clearly, no," Marinette replied with a laugh. I'm not so balanced on dry land, much less on ice," Marinette said, huffing at the mess of words that came out of her mouth. "Have you?" she asked, politely returning the question. Adrienne nodded. She noticed that his blonde hair bounced slightly even under the blue beanie atop his head. "Yeah, once when I was like 13. My father wanted me to learn, but then decided that it was a bad idea," he said with a laugh. "So what you're telling me is that I could have known a world-class ice skater, but your dear old dad nopes that idea?" "Ha, something like that," Adrienne said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, knowing that, I'm kind of disappointed. You could be doing twirls all over the ice, yet here we are falling flat on our faces every couple of seconds," Marinette joked. "We are so good at this," Adrienne added. They both sighed and turned to look at their best friends, who were, well, being sickeningly cute. Alia and Nino were talking and laughing arm in arm, skating around on their 4 feet. Imagine being in a relationship for over 2 years. Just literally could never be me," Marinette said. There was no bitter undertone in her voice, though. Adrienne hummed his agreement. "When I met him, he was still dating her, and I thought, wow, that's crazy. His relationship is longer than our friendship," Adrienne mused, still a bit unbelievingly so. "I know. It's so weird. I met them at the same time back in college, and they started dating later that year, and now here we are. Juniors in university. It's wild," she said. There was a silence for a couple of minutes, and Marinette was trying to figure out another thing to say to get a conversation going. "You ever been in a relationship?" she ended up asking. "Nope." And that was that. Nothing more was said, and internally, Marinette screamed. She was not one of those people who like silence, but luckily she was saved by their friends coming back from their impromptu honeymoon, because let's face it, it was adorable. And they all went out to eat. Again, she tried to talk to Adrienne, but the conversation was too awkward. It was now that Marinette was stuck in the same predicament. Awkward silence with no conversation to fill the gaps. Strangely though, Adrienne was unaffected by it. Well, he was always unaffected, and that was honestly the weird part. Together, they were watching as people walked by as they sat outside of a cafe, sipping on slightly bitter coffee. Marinette had tried to talk about class and ask how he was doing, but there really didn't seem to be much to talk about. "Oh, is that a Marinette du pancake that I see?" Upon hearing that voice, Marinette wanted to faceplant into the table and throw the coffee at the bearer. "Lila Rossi, how wonderful it is to see you," the black-haired girl said through gritted teeth. Lila smiled back with an equal amount of sickening sweetness that was anything that was genuine. "What a surprise to see you here," Lila said, leaning onto the table with her elbows, eyeing Adrienne. Marinette took in a calming breath, though it didn't do much to actually calm her. "On campus? I could say the same for you. How have you been?" "Wonderful, I'm sure," Marinette said, her voice honeyed and filled with sarcasm. Lila clicked her tongue thrice. "Don't be rude. Introduce me to your friend here," Lila said, smiling widely at Adrienne, looking an awful lot like a predatory fox. Marinette crossed her arms stiffly. "I would love to. However, we are a bit busy and need to get going. Don't worry, I'll introduce you soon," Marinette said, gripping Adrienne's wrist and pulling him up. He sent her a silent yet shocked expression. "See you soon. It was so nice to see you," Marinette said with a fake smile. "Of course," Lila replied, matching the passive-aggressive tone perfectly. Marinette sighed deeply and let go of Adrienne's wrist. "Sorry," she said with an apologetic smile. Judging by his utterly shocked expression, he was very confused as to what was happening. It's okay, but what happened there?" he asked. Marinette looked to the ground, the memories flying back into her mind. That is Lila Rossi, an old classmate of mine," she admitted. Adrienne tilted his head as if to ask for her to elaborate. So she did. "We went to high school together, and honestly, I did not like her one bit, but everyone else did. She had this habit of, well, lying. She had an excuse for everything. Homework not being done. My parents were fighting all night and almost got divorced. She wanted the best artist for her project so she didn't have to do much work. Oh my God, I've always admired your work," she says, as the day before she was literally laughing at their comics. "It bothered me, and it still does. We used to get in a ton of squabbles. I didn't have a lot of self-restraint back then, that was not good. But every once in a while I'll see her, and we'll have to act polite, but as you may realize, we are not friends still. Passive aggression is our game, and we patter it well," Marinette explained. Adrienne blinked once at her. I didn't even pick that up," he said blankly. Marinette nearly choked. "Seriously? We were literally dripping sarcasm all over the place," Marinette exclaimed. Adrienne shrugged and smiled shyly at her. I guess I'm just not very good at picking up social cues," he admitted. She wanted to say yes. Really? You think? Maybe, but refrained, because now that she was older, she did have self-restraint. "I noticed," she opted for instead, giving it a lighter tone. Adrienne sighed and sat down at a park bench. Wait, when had they gotten to a park? "I'm so bad at this," he said almost miserably. Marinette placed a hand on his shoulder gently. She felt him sigh deeply. "Social cues and understanding all of these things. I'm just so bad at it. I try, and yet I still fail. I mean, I messed up the first time I tried to be friends with you. I have no idea what to talk about. I have no clue as to how to make conversation. I don't even know how to read people's emotions like you can. Sometimes Nino will come home talking about something someone did, and I just don't get it. And I'm just no use in helping him, Adrienne ranted on. Quietly, Marinette sat down next to him and rubbed his back slowly. Don't expect yourself to just suddenly be able to know every little thing. Even I get lost when it comes to body language translations, she said. Adrienne lifted his head and looked at her. His intense green eyes stared at her with sorrow. I don't even know how to make friends. Barely, at least. Or make conversation. I never know if I should say something or not. Sometimes I think of something to say. I don't know if it's a normal thing to say, so I just don't say it, and then we just sit in silence, Adrienne sighed. I'm 20, and I barely know how to talk to people. Toddlers on the street have better social skills than me, Adrienne said. Marinette didn't speak. She knew he was a little behind when it came to social situations, but it was starting to sound like he had been isolated from birth. Homeschooled kids were rarely this terrible at socializing, and at this age. Most do something with a public school by age 17. Adrienne, I think you're nervous. You're not sure what to say, so you don't say it at all. Do you feel like you need someone to tell you what's acceptable to say? Marinette asked. Adrienne shrugged. I don't know. Maybe. I feel like I need to figure it out by myself, but Nino doesn't even get affected by anything, even when I give too much information, so he's kind of no help. The blonde cracked a smile. Okay, you can talk to me, Marinette said, offering a kind smile. Adrienne looked at her with a completely surprised expression. Really? Yeah, that's kind of why I offered. You get really shocked when people offer to help you. I do? Yes, you do. Oh, is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, not a big deal, no. It's just, is there a reason for that? Kinda. I don't really want to talk much about it. Marinette nodded and let the conversation hang in the air for a bit. If you didn't want a topic being pushed, you wouldn't push it. Anytime, anything you want to say, go ahead. I'm not going to judge you no matter how off it may sound. I'll let you know if it's an appropriate thing to say or not, Marinette said, standing up and offering a hand to Adrienne to help him up. He smiled at her, looking like a child who had been offered some help on learning the shapes, and took it. His hands were, a lot rougher than she had expected, but incredibly warm. Thank you, he said, beginning to walk again, no destination in mind. So, what is a passive-aggressive tone? Like, I know what being passive-aggressive means, but only kind of, not really. Adrienne asked, a telltale blush appearing on his face. Marinette smiled and explained. It's kind of where you have to be polite, but you don't want to be. There's usually a lot of sarcasm and it can sound very backhanded. Like when Lila was telling me she didn't expect to see me on campus. On paper that'd be a greeting, but in person with a certain tone, expression, it can be taken differently. Me and Lila don't like each other, so it's more like a jab at me going to uni. She's trying to say she didn't expect to see me at a higher education, which is funny because she's the one that never came to school, Marinette said, allowing a slightly bitter laugh to leave her. Adrienne listened and nodded as if he was listening to a Bible lecture rather than an explanation of, hey, this is why me and this girl don't like each other. So, it depends on the tone and your relationship with this person? He asked. Marinette nodded. Yeah. honestly, you're just gonna have to hear it more often to get it. Don't worry, a lot of people are passive-aggressive, Marinette sighed, thinking of the masses of people at their school who oozed sarcasm, and definitely were the type to say, "You need something?" As of right now, I'll help you explain. It's something, I will say, it is something more so that you'll feel there's something wrong, something off, Marinette explained. Again, Adrienne nodded thoughtfully. Okay, makes sense, he said. They walked in silence some more, eventually getting back to his apartment. Somehow. You're really pretty, Adrienne said randomly. Just for reference. Marinette did not expect that sentence whatsoever. She sputtered and nearly tripped over her own 2 feet. Well, actually, she probably would have if Adrienne hadn't caught her by the waist and helped her stay standing. Was that wrong? He asked worriedly. Marinette had no idea what to tell him. Well, not really. It's just, that was really sudden, she said, a nervous blush coming up on her face. Adrienne tilted his head to the side. So, should I say it? Like if I think someone else is also really pretty, I can tell them? He asked. Marinette bit her lip. Yeah, you can. Honestly, it's quite honestly the opposite of rude. It's a compliment, but it's usually not thrown around so casually. For at least some people like me, at least. You can say it, yeah, but you might get different reactions depending on the person, Marinette explained. So, I could tell you it again some other time and it won't be rude? Adrienne asked with a smile. Marinette nodded, not trusting herself to open her mouth and not scream. This was not how she was expecting the conversation to be going, but Adrienne, however, seemed completely unaffected. Okay, cool, he said easily. Yeah, Marinette said breathfully. Adrienne may have been fine with the sudden compliment, but, you know, Marinette was not. Rarely did people ever tell her she was pretty, much less attractive blonde guys her age. She'd be lying straight through her teeth if she said that it didn't feel nice, or that the blush was more of a reaction to the sentence than Adrienne himself.